Canadian work permit application. Frequent asked questions. How do I apply for a work permit? The application procedure is different depending on which type of work permit you need. The first step is determining which work permit is best for you. If you need help figuring out the application, simply contact us, and a member of our team will assist you with scheduling a consultation. What documents are required to apply for a Canadian work permit? The documents required for a Canadian work permit will depend on the type of work permit you are applying for. Applicants may need to provide the following documents as part of their work permit application. Completed application forms. Proof of status in Canada, if applicable. Family members' proof of status, if applicable. Labor market impact assessment, if applicable. Written offer of employment, if applicable. CV/resume. Marriage certificate, if applicable. Certificat d'acceptation du Québec, CAQ, if applicable. Proof that you meet the job requirements. Valid copy of your passport. Copy of education credential. Medical exam results, if requested. Evidence of financial means to stay in Canada and return to home country. Proof of payment for applicable government fees. Recent passport-sized photos. Biometrics for Canadian work permits. IRCC currently has a temporary measure in place that exempts applicants applying for a work permit from within Canada. Candidates outside of Canada are still required to provide biometrics upon receiving a biometrics instruction letter. Follow the Government of Canada's instructions for how to give your biometrics on their dedicated page. Police clearances for Canadian work permits. The visa officer reviewing your application may ask you to provide police clearances certificates. Depending on where you are applying from, this document may be part of your application checklist and must be provided with your initial submission. Work permit applicants may be required to provide a police clearance certificate from any country that they have lived in for 6 months or more past the age of 18. Medical exam for Canadian work permit. Foreign nationals that apply to work in Canada may need to complete a medical exam, depending on their intended length of stay, where they have lived, and what occupation they will work in. If you intend to work in Canada for less than 6 months, you will likely not require a medical exam, with some exceptions. In the case that you intend to work in a job that brings you into close contact with people, or are an agricultural worker that has been to certain countries, you will need a medical exam. If you are planning to work in Canada for longer than 6 months, you will be required to take a medical exam if one of the following conditions applies. You have lived in or traveled to one of the countries listed on Canada's Find Out If You Need a Medical Exam page for 6 months or longer, or you intend to work in an occupation where you will be in close contact with people listed in the above-mentioned hyperlink. Medical exams must be completed with a panel physician designated by IRCC. You can find a panel physician near you on IRCC's Find a Panel Physician webpage. Applicants have the option to take an upfront medical exam. This involves contacting the panel physician directly and taking the exam prior to submitting a work permit application. If you do not provide your medical exam results with your application, the IRCC officer will send instructions on how to complete the medical exam and provide a deadline for when it needs to be completed. Photo requirements for Canadian work permit. Foreign nationals applying for a Canadian work permit must provide a passport-sized photo with their application. The photo must be according to IRCC's specifications. How long will it take to process my work permit application? The processing time for a work permit application depends on the type of work permit and the applicant's country of residence at the time of application. Processing times range anywhere from a few weeks to several months. How long will it take to process my LMIA application? There are 2 types of labor market impact assessment, LMIA, applications, a regular LMIA and a simplified LMIA. The simplified LMIA is only available in the province of Quebec. The regular LMIA is processed on a case-by-case basis with processing times varying greatly from applicant to applicant. Generally, it takes a minimum of 5 months to receive a response on a regular LMIA application. If an employer is eligible for Canada's Global Talent Stream, they may qualify for expedited LMIA processing. The simplified LMIA completed for Quebec employment is usually processed in approximately 2 to 3 months. What is the rate of success for work permit/LMIA applications? It is impossible to give a rate of success for work permit/LMIA applications, as all applications are processed on a case-by-case basis. If an applicant meets the requirements of the LMIA, their application should be approved. However, applications are assessed by individual officers, each exercising their own discretion in choosing whether or not to approve a work permit application. How can I check the status of my work permit application? If you submitted an online work permit application, you may check the status through your online account. If you submitted a paper-based application, you may check the status by linking it to an online IRCC account. Reasons a work permit application is refused. Receiving a work permit refusal can be devastating. There are many reasons a work permit can be refused. If it is unclear why your application was refused, applying for GCMS notes may help get a better idea, and can help address the officer's concerns if you decide to reapply. Here are some common reasons for a work permit refusal. The officer was not convinced that you could adequately perform your intended work. The officer was not convinced that you would return to your home country at the end of your authorized stay in Canada. You do not meet the criteria for the work permit you applied for. How can I include my spouse and dependents on my work permit application? If you are applying for a closed Canadian work permit, your spouse may be eligible for an open work permit. If your spouse is eligible, they will need to apply for their own work permit. In most cases, they must apply for this permit online. How do I activate my work permit? How you activate your work permit will depend on where you are applying from and how you are applying. Activating your work permit after applying from within Canada. If your application is approved after applying for a work permit from within Canada, you will receive an approval letter from IRCC. In the case that you applied online, the approval letter will appear in your account. If you submitted a paper-based application, the letter would arrive at your mailing address. Once you have received your approval letter, your physical work permit will arrive by mail. The permit will arrive already activated, and you can use it to work in Canada. Activating your work permit after applying from outside Canada. If your application is approved after applying from outside of Canada, you will receive a letter with instructions on how to obtain your physical work permit at the Canadian Port of Entry (POE). In the case that you applied online, the instruction letter will appear on your online account. If you applied on paper, you would receive the letter to your mailing address. Activating your work permit after applying from the Port of Entry. Certain applicants may be eligible to apply for a work permit at the Port of Entry to Canada. If you are applying for a work permit at the border, you will need to bring documents that support your eligibility. If approved, the officer may print the work permit right away at the border. This work permit can be used right away.